It's going. So, hello and welcome to this interview with Joanna Santa Barbara. And Joanna Santa Barbara, could you please introduce yourself first? Who are you?
Oh, gladly. Okay, I am, first of all, I'm speaking to you from New Zealand. So, greetings from across many oceans. I'm a retired child psychiatrist who did most of my work in Canada. And I also, many decades ago, became involved in peace studies and therefore the TRANSCEND network. I taught peace studies at McMaster University in Canada and collaborated with Joanna and other TRANSCEND members on various projects, including writing the book on reconciliation.
So we got curious about a specific aspect of your work, and it's permaculture, and especially the Atamai village. How did you get engaged in the Atamai village, and what is your passion and vision behind the Atamai village and permaculture?
Okay. As well as engaging in peace work, I became aware, and with my husband, Jack, who's also a TRANSCEND member, from, I suppose, the 90s, of the increasing level of ecological crisis, of the potential for energy depletion, particularly fossil fuels, and then increasingly aware of climate change, which kind of presses itself upon us with ever increasing urgency. Jack, my husband, and I felt we wanted to bring our lives into alignment with our principles and our growing understanding of the global ecological crisis, and we made many adaptations to the way we lived in Canada, but finally felt that we needed, for the sake of our own integrity, to go further in adapting our lifestyle, and that it would be good to try to work with a community on creating a more sustainable lifestyle using less energy, especially fossil fuel energy, and more respectful of the biophysical limits of our planet and also its biodiversity crisis. So all of those ideas came together in a search for where we might work on such a project, and something close to the ideas we were developing was shaping up in New Zealand. So it was a huge decision and a huge uprooting of our lives, but we decided to move to New Zealand to join this project. It was clear from the beginning that it would be based on permaculture principles, which of course were in line with all of the other ideas we were developing. And so we already knew a little bit about permaculture at that point, but we learned a great deal more on the way.
Talking about the start of your involvement, what were the expectations that you had and the wishes that you had at the beginning, and what has worked out, and what were unsuspected or unexpected surprises?
Okay, lots in all of those categories. What we expected was to develop a way of living that accorded with the principles that we were developing, and it's reasonable to sum that up by saying permaculture principles. Because permaculture is a pretty inclusive system, and does indeed embody the principles of sustainability, respect for limits, respect for biodiversity, fair sharing, the idea of equity. So permaculture does certainly have all of those things wrapped up in it. So we expected that we would little by little work out a lifestyle in accordance with those principles. We also expected there to be bumps and bangs on the way. We certainly expected that working with community would be both a joy and a pain. I would say all of those expectations have been fulfilled, actually. Where we are now is about eight families living in a community together, all with private gardens and all contributing to a communal orchard. And the joy of community is certainly there. I could detail some of the things about it that I truly enjoy, and also the bangs and bumps are there too. That they have been on the way. I mean, lots of little conflicts that have been resolved, and some big bangs. In particular, the project running out of money before it could complete its development, and so that the development is taking a different course at this point. So that's a summary of a decade, actually. So there's lots in there.
Wonderful. And you, like, what I was very interested in is the aspect that it's not just one farm or one or a few people, but 8 families that are doing permaculture in this community. Would you say that's already a big achievement?
Yeah, sometimes we lose sight of an overview of our accomplishments, but when you kindly frame it that way, yeah, I guess one could say that it is. People have. We have learned a lot on the way, including many practical skills. I think I've acquired a lot of practical skills in the last 10 years that I didn't have before, and I think that's probably true of most people. We've all learned a lot about organic gardening, and we produce good food. We eat very well. Nearly all of us were new to community living. There are a few people here who have had experience of community living, and that's been quite valuable to us. But we have accomplished a functional community. We like each other, enjoy each other's company, have fun together. So yeah, much has been accomplished. The land has benefited from our presence. I think it's fair to say fertility has been increased on the land. It looks more beautiful than before. That is the part that's developed. Looks more beautiful than before, with lots and lots of tree planting. So yeah, when you step back and have a look, yeah, we've accomplished something in that time.
And in that aspect, what would you say is the impact of your project for the region and also for New Zealand, where you're based?
I am not aware of its having an important impact on the region and New Zealand at this point. People, perhaps I should modify that a little bit. People do come to visit it, out of interest in what we're doing. We people from different parts of New Zealand come to have a look at what we're doing. I think that perhaps in terms of transmission of ideas, skills, and principles, the most transmission is to the young people that we have who are traveling, the woofers, that's the world, willing workers on organic farms. So we get lots of German young people, in fact, and other European young people, and a few from other parts of the world, eager learners, and they work with us, of course, for the period they're here, and many of them speak about the influence upon them and upon the direction in life that they plan to take of what they've learned while they've worked with one or other of the families in Atamai. That's the sort of influence that I'm aware of transmitting.
It sounds beautiful that you have this influence on people and that they kind of go way different than they came to Atamai village.
They say so, and I may say that we greatly enjoy and benefit from their presence too.
You talked about the trees that are planted and also like the ecology that has changed. Could you talk a bit more in specific about how nature or ecology has changed on the project side from the start to now?
I can do that. When we acquired the land, it's quite hilly land. There are ridges and gullies, and it was already deforested and had been used as grazing land for many years. By the time we acquired it, it was quite infertile and good only for grazing, in fact. And so we started with pretty unpromising land. It had its own beauty at the time, sort of interesting contours, a few little streams and springs on the landscape, although not visible ones. They were there, but you had to really look for them. There have been thousands of trees planted since that. Oh, I should add that part of the land was a pine plantation, which was intended for harvesting. So it was a monoculture pine, that's non-native to New Zealand plantation, and it's known that the pine plantations are really not good for the soil. They deplete the soil. So that was the start. Now a plan was developed to progressively cut the pines and replace the pines with a mixture of native and other useful trees. And that's in progress. And in New Zealand, because of the climatic conditions, things grow quite fast. So trees and bushes planted 6 years ago are now could easily be 5-6 meters tall, and some of them are. So young forests are growing where there was just pretty barren grazing land before. With a permaculture approach, people looked carefully and studied the contours of this hilly, uneven terrain. Also studied the water sources and the insulation aspects of it, and developed where people's houses and gardens would be, to ensure that they had north-facing aspects for growth. In Europe, you would read that as south-facing. but we're in the southern hemisphere. So all building areas were planned so that they would be good gardening areas. And similarly, one particular slope was carefully terraced to create orchard terraces. It's a fairly large, highly diverse orchard that we work communally. Watercourses were protected, identified and protected, and land was contoured in order by permaculture principles in order to maximally retain water in its movement downhill. A number of ponds were dug. In New Zealand, they're usually called dams. But anyway, we have a number of ponds which are used for irrigation in the dry summer. The winter's wet, the summer's dry. And also landscaped for beauty and for swimming. So much of it is really quite attractive. It's quite a beautiful place. Very, very lovely working in the orchard. That's a particularly lovely part of the village. But it's certainly the application of the permaculture principles certainly has changed how it looks. The houses too are pretty attractive dwellings built according to eco architecture principles, but you're asking particularly here about the land.
Yeah, I would also be interested in the eco architecture, if you could explain a bit.
Sure. Well, I have to be concise because one could go on for a long time about the principles of eco-architecture. So let me try to compress this. As much as possible, houses are built out of what's available on the land. For example, the house that I'm standing in now, my own house, was built out of by making pressed earth blocks out of the earth here. Yes, some of the other houses have done their best to adhere to the same principles. Houses are built of non-toxic materials, so that when they eventually decompose, there will be no toxic residue on the land. They're built with careful arrangements about being able to supply their own energy, mostly from photovoltaic panels and also passive solar water heating. Being self-sufficient for water, which is mostly roof rainwater, although those people who are near springs make some use of those, and we also have dug a pond to retain the heavy winter rains. What else to say? They are, of course, passive solar houses, so their consumption of energy for heating is minimal, almost zero, in fact, because the passive solar is sufficient, and also for cooling. They're built so that you can arrange airflow through the houses. None of the houses would have electric air conditioning. There's a little bit of supplementary wood burning using biomass to heat houses in the depths of winter. Cooking is also largely dependent on renewable energy. using both electricity from one's own electricity arrangements and also wood burning. Okay, that's enough. It's a big subject. Don't use up too much time carrying on about it. But anyway, much attention to trying to live within the limits that nature provides, and to be self-sufficient in energy, water, and also waste, which I haven't touched on. But most houses have composting toilets.